Okay, our next speaker, still on the ag-tech scene, we have Guillaume Jourdain from Bilberry. We are fortunate enough he is also here. Bilberry is a company based in France, but he tells me they're soon to open an office in Australia in the next month. So basically, sorry, glasses. Yep. Sorry. So developing camera technology to recognise weeds using artificial intelligence. We've all heard a lot about the green-on-green technology, and we will talk more about that tomorrow, but Guillaume was just going to give us an overview today, so thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Guillaume Jourdain. I'm the founder and CEO of Bilberry. I don't know what you think about the previous presentation, but I really loved it. So I'm going to talk also about technology. Obviously, Salah covered already a lot of points, so I'm going to just give a quick overview. Just a couple of intro notes. I already gave a similar presentation at the Bendigo GRDC updates a couple of months ago. So if you were there, probably it's a good time to take a power nap. And otherwise, I think you'll be interested. And all the work that we conducted in Australia was done in collaboration with AgriFac. So I'm going to talk about green-on-green camera spraying, and I think the first thing that I want to do is show you a video because it really speaks for itself. So basically it's an AgriFac sprayer. We've got a camera every 3 meters on the boom, so it's in a wheat field in Western Australia, and the white dots that I hope you can see are wild radish, so they've got huge resistance issue in WA, and so basically what we do is we just spray on the radish. So I think it's really a big thing for farmers in Western Australia. On the second video, it's a video that was shot in the Netherlands, so back in Europe. We are spraying dock weeds in pastures, so the same setup, AgriFac boom. I think this one is smaller, probably 36 meters. One camera every 3 meters, looking in front, 3 to 4 meters in front, and then detecting the weeds on the go to spray only on the weeds and not on the whole paddock. So that's basically green-on-green camera spraying. Today I would like to try to explain how the technology works, because I believe that it's crucial for you to understand what are the benefits of the technology, of course, but also what are the limitations of the technology. It's not a perfect technology, it will never be, and so if you can understand what you can do with it and what you cannot do, it will help a lot. And the best idea that we had to try to explain the technology is to guide you through the journey that we came through to create Bilberry. So basically it started about 5 years ago in 2014. So with 2 other engineers from engineering school, we decided to create a company. And the basic thing is we were engineers, so we just said, okay, let's do something with technology. So it was really basic. And then we also thought we want to do something useful for real people and solve real issues. So we just thought then maybe let's try agriculture. There are probably things to do. We had one really big issue at that time. The 3 of us, we were born and raised in Paris, and we knew basically nothing about agriculture, which was a really bad start. So what we did basically is that we opened the yellow pages. We looked at farmers, and then we started calling people. We did that for about a year. So we just met farmers, agronomists, cooperatives, I mean, as many people as possible on the agricultural world. And we were just asking really easy questions. So what's your job? What are your issues? What can we do for you? And all the time people kept on coming back on weeds. There are so many issues with weeds. So if you could just spray on the weeds and not on the whole paddock, it would help on so many levels. So we just said, okay, spot spraying, why not? Is it doable? We looked at the research side, and we saw that the researchers started working on spot spraying in the early 90s, so a long time ago. And since it was people were working on that area for so long, we wanted to understand why it was not already commercial and working. And so what we saw is that it was working extremely well in labs, so they could develop algorithms and robots or tools that would detect weeds in labs and kill them, but then once they were going into the paddock, it was not working at all. And why it was not working is because actually paddock conditions, it's real life conditions and it's really complicated, meaning that when you go in one direction, you've got the sun in front of you. When you go in the other direction, then it's in your back. Sometimes you've got clouds, you can have wind, you've got different soil varieties. In a presentation this morning, we could see a paddock with 3 different soil types on just 50 hectares. So you've got different weeds, different crops. So everything's different. So it's very difficult to just simulate all that in a lab. So basically what changed about 4 years ago is the development of artificial intelligence. So the autonomous vehicles starting to really be a new trend in around, I think, 2016. And what's great is that then they had lots of embedded sensors that became way cheaper, and they developed a lot of artificial intelligence stuff. And what's great about artificial intelligence is that it's good at solving complex issues, and paddock conditions are complex issues. So we started working with AI to try to find a solution. I wanted to talk a bit about supervised learning process. So obviously Salah already covered this topic, so I'm going to be really quick. The first thing that you need to do, oh, there were nice pictures, it's a shame, is to collect pictures, as many different pictures as possible. So the goal, for instance, if you want to develop a green on brown algorithms, so basically what the WeedIt does today, you want to have all the different soil types. You want to have all different situations, so with stubbles, with no stubbles. And what's really important is that these images, these different images, will be used to train the algorithms, meaning that the algorithms will look at all the pictures and then learn based on that. And so if you do not include enough diversity, then it will not be good on these images that it has never seen. So then you train the algorithm and you have to test it. So you've got to test it in real conditions, so on farms. What we saw and what was quite interesting is that, for instance, we developed the first algorithms in Australia in Beefwood, so New South Wales, and it was working really, really well. We were really happy. So green on brown, really small weeds were detected. And then we went in Western Australia, and we started testing these algorithms. And it was on sandy soils. And actually the sand was really beautiful sand, white sand, but we had never seen that before. And so the algorithms were just not working at all. So we had to gather more pictures, train the algorithms again, and then it was working well. So that's why diversity is really important. So back to our story, 2017, so we had our first commercial applications that were live. It was not in agriculture. Actually, it was on trains. On trains, I don't know if you are aware, but on rail tracks there are weeds, and you have to kill them for safety reasons. And basically, there are trains, spray trains, that would just spray Roundup on these weeds to kill them. And what we do is that we developed cameras that we put on the trains and that recognize the weeds and just spot spray them. So exactly the same principle as in the fields. The only difference would be that it goes a bit faster, so we go up to 60 kilometers per hour. So I know that in Australia you would probably like to drive close to 60 in the paddocks. At the moment we are limited at 30, but I guess there are other things that should be improved before the cameras. At the same time, we also did our first trials in Australia, 2017, so at Beefwood and then Western Australia. So that's when we started understanding what are the needs over here. 2018, then we had our first green-on-green applications that were available, so they are available back in Europe. It's the dogweed in pastures application that you saw on the video. And we could learn quite a lot of interesting things back then, and interesting things about the benefits of the technology. I think the first benefit, before the savings, is definitely that it's a great tool to be able to control better the hard-to-kill weeds, so the resistant weeds. Why? Because you can use different rates. So usually if you just go blanket spraying, you might want to reduce a bit the dose of chemical that you put, because it gets very expensive. When you just spray on 5 or 10% of the paddock, we can just go full dose, even more, to kill the weeds. Also, you can use different chemicals that you would not use on blanket spraying because it's way too expensive. So it also opens new doors to work on weed control. Then obviously the second point that's really interesting would be the savings. So average savings for dogweed was about 97%. So it's a chemical that's really expensive. It's about 50 euros per hectare. So the farmers are quite happy to be able to use the cameras. And again, another thing that's, I think, quite interesting to understand or to know is that we developed the first version of the algorithms in 2018, and actually we used the dataset that we collected in 2017. And in this dataset, for some reasons, there were no clovers, meaning that the algorithms had never seen clovers before. And so the first time we saw clovers was in 2018, and the algorithm decided to detect or to categorize the clovers as weeds, so they were killed, which was not the intent in the beginning, or actually the farmers were not so happy with that. So what we did is that we collected pictures of clovers, we trained the algorithms again, and now, 2019, we've got an updated version of the algorithm which thinks that clovers are nice plants, so that does not kill clovers anymore. So that's why it's really important to have that diversity again in the training, otherwise you will have surprises in the end. Then 2019, we decided as a company to put our focus in Australia. So we work in Europe, obviously, but Australia is the market where we want to develop first the technology. So we are opening an office in Perth. So it's going to be open in 3 weeks now. So basically I'm flying back to France tomorrow. I'm packing up my stuff and then coming back to Australia. And there are 3 other people, so we will be 4 people opening the office there. And there are several reasons why we see Australia as the main market to start with. First, when we look a bit about what happened in the past, we see that technology adoption was really, really fast and quick in Australia. So if you look at the RTK, the first place in the world where it was adopted is Australia. Then now it's everywhere. Even on small farms in France, you can see people that have RTK. And also I think, I don't want to get too political, but there are also reasons. Over here you don't have any subsidies when you do farming, so basically you have to have a sustainable system on your own. Back in Europe there are lots of subsidies, so the technological adoption is not really the same. Anyway, then to sum it up, so I'm sorry about the slides, I think the conversion was really not good with the computer. To sum it up, the benefits of the technology. The first one definitely is a better weed control. So I think WeedSmart talks a lot about integrated weed management and a toolbox where you have many tools to control the weeds. The way we see the cameras is really as a new tool that you can use to be able to control better the weeds. So hopefully, maybe in the future, you will be able to talk about the big 7, not the big 6, to include the cameras. So first, really better weed control. Then, of course, you can make big chemical savings. That's definitely a big advantage. So for green on brown, we are over 90% savings. But also, we really want to stress that the most important things is that you can control the weeds better, because the savings, it depends a lot on the paddock, on the weather, on the soil, on so many different things that it varies a lot from one year to the other. We believe that also it will help on the yield side, because obviously when you spray chemicals, it has an impact on the crop. So it depends on the chemical, on the crop. But if you just spray 10% of the paddock instead of 100%, then the 90% of crop that has not been sprayed would probably grow better than the rest. Also recently, I've not put that here, but we hear more and more about MRLs. So I guess that if you can spray less, probably it's going to be interesting also for exportations. Then there are also some stuff that needs to be monitored, so it's not a perfect technology. And I'm talking in general about the technology. I'm not talking just about Bilberry, about what we do, but camera technology will never be perfect. You will always miss some weeds. There will always be some things that will not be perfect. I think the first thing that's interesting to understand is that if you start using cameras, it will change the way you work. Why? Because you can use different chemicals, you can use different rates, you can spray at different times. Also, since you will not see every single weeds, you might have to go 2 times instead of just 1. So it will have some implications for you that you have to understand. And then you have to decide when it's a good situation to use the cameras and when it's not a good situation to use the cameras. Also, obviously, you've seen that it's less efficient in unknown situations. And also, it's a new technology, so there will be a lot of learning, a lot of things that will be discovered also along the way. And to finish it, the final messages would be that green-on-green camera spraying, it's a reality now. So I'm not saying that there are like hundreds of systems around the world, but there are already real growers that are benefiting from the technology. Also, it's probably key to understand the technology, to be able to use it properly. And as a company, we provide a tool, but then you are the one using the tool. So you probably have to be able to understand how it works to be able to use it properly. Then I think the floor will be open for questions, but if you have other questions afterwards, you can just send me a mail or tweet or anything, and I will try to answer fast. Thank you.
Any questions?
So there are lots of different answers. So first, about the algorithms that we can develop. The cameras, they are able to see whatever you can see with your eyes. So if it's very difficult to see with your eyes, it will be difficult with the cameras. So if you want to detect at an early stage ryegrass within wheat, that's very difficult. If you want to detect wild radish in wheat when the radish are flowering, then that's quite easy. Then to just give you an idea about the time it takes to develop an algorithm would be about 2 months, I think, to gather data, label it, train the algorithms, test it. And then the big issue that we have usually is that we've got seasons, and meaning that usually we can work during maybe 1 month, and then we've got to wait for a year to be able to test it again in real conditions. We can do some work at the office, but it will never be as good as the work in the fields.
Down the front here.
You talked about the adoption curve in France being very different from Australia. Can you elaborate on that and how you tackle that and what you do? And as part of it, how does every week, every seed, every farm, every year fit into that challenge?
How do we tackle it? The first decision that we made is to prioritize Australia. So Australia is the priority number 1, and what comes in Europe is good, but we will not push for anything to happen back in Europe. So that's the first thing. Then about every weed, every seed, every farm, every year. I think one thing that's really interesting to see, one thing that's nice to understand is that the first algorithms that we developed at Beefwood for green and brown, they were not really robust, and so when we came to Western Australia, they were not so good. But now we've been working on many different farms in Australia, and we are quite happy with the results. And we just took the algorithms back to Europe, in Bulgaria, so Eastern Europe, and we just said, okay, let's try them, and we'll see if it works. And actually, the algorithms performed better in Bulgaria than back here. So what we think is that once you've got enough data and enough diversity, then it will work on basically every farm. Except if you have very different conditions, unique conditions, then we might have to do something. But retraining an algorithm is not really complicated. I said that it would be about 2 months to develop an algorithm, but when we came to Western Australia with this new type of soil that we had not seen before, it took us about 2 weeks to update the algorithm, just because we had to take a bit of pictures, label it, train it, but it was just a small fraction of the total data set that we have, so it's not really long. I don't know if you had more questions about that, because it's pretty broad.
Garth.
Given the focus on Australia, we don't even work with regulators through the registration.
That's a big question. So we are looking at what's going on with the APVMA. Croplands that distributes the WeedIt obviously is owned by New Farm, and so they are talking a lot with the regulators. I think that's really interesting, and there is a big question mark here. Should we be able to talk with them? I think they have to be aware of what's going on. Then are we big enough as a company at the moment to be able to really have a say? That's a question that we have at the moment, and I think probably we will have to partner with different people that have a bigger weight than Bilberry in Australia to be able to be listened by the APVMA.
Yep, Pete.
Yeah, we saw some weed mapping earlier where people would tap into the screen every time they saw a weed. Will Bilberry be able to create a weed map?
Yeah, definitely. So I was really interesting because it was the first time I saw a weed map done by people just clicking. So I think it was really interesting to see that you can already see patterns in the. We record everything that's going on the cameras, so we know where the weeds are, and also the goal also will be in the future to have a nice way to give the information to farmers, which weeds in which paddock, at which level. Yeah, so definitely weed map is part of what we do. So, as far as we are concerned, we sell the cameras to sprayer manufacturers, and then they sell the cameras with the sprayers. So we do not define the price. So at the moment in Australia, we are working with Agrifac. There is someone from Agrifac in the room, so we will be able to give you more details. But the price of the technology would be about $225,000 for a 36-meter boom at the moment when you equip it on an Agrifac boom.
If you put these cameras on, say, 10 sprayers at all farmers in the 6 months, we'll have so much data and use cases, possibility. Each other would be that's quite fun. Scale up in the business.
Yeah, that's a big thing. We already have lots and lots of data. And the way we work at the moment, we have 10 people, full-time job, labeling images. And I would say it's probably not the most fascinating job in the world. But it's absolutely needed at the moment for what we do. And it's quite easy for us to scale that team. So that's the first thing. But then already we've got too much data today, and so we have developed algorithms that actually, I will come back to the previous presentation. You know, there are supervised learning algorithm and unsupervised learning algorithm. We've developed some unsupervised learning algorithm to make a first sorting thing into our database, because we've got millions of images. So even if you had 10,000 people to label them, you could not do it. So we've got these unsupervised algorithms that create these clusters of images that look the same. And then we consider, is it interesting or is it not interesting? Because we can have images, for instance, when the boom is folded. Not interesting, just delete them. Then we can have images when the sprayer is just stopped for any kind of reasons. So always the same picture, not interesting. Then we can have lots of pictures that look the same because the sun is at exactly the same place, same soil, same crop variety, same everything, not interesting. So there is already a first job that is done completely automatically by algorithms. But that's a challenge on which we are working every day because of, it's, you know, we hear a lot about big data and this kind of stuff, and we are exactly in that, and when you've got too much data, then it gets crazy. At the moment, it does not work. We are currently working on lights, so the lights will be shipped to Australia in 1 week or 2 weeks. So hopefully, we hope to have something before the end of the year. We already have lights on the trains, so it's working really well, and we are confident that it's going to work. But the challenge is that on trains, it's easy because a train is basically a building. So we just put the biggest lights that we could find, put them, and it's working. On a sprayer, not working. So we've got to have very, very specific lights. So we are working with a design office that's making a specific design for the power, for where it enlightens everything, lots of different things to do. So that's why it takes a bit more time. But we expect to have a similar level of results by night once we have the lights.
Okay, we might wrap it up there. Thank you, Guillaume. We were lucky to see the Green on Green technology at Beefwood Farm on WeedSmart Week last year. We're going to talk more about it tomorrow, so there's every chance it could be a big 7 for next year's WeedSmart Week. Thank you.